Travel back in time to the 80s, reliving the laughter. The heroes.
Pick up your phone and call the professionals. Go, Ghostbusters.
And the honesty.
What's up, Norm? My nipples. It's freezing out there.
Because just like you, we're stuck in the 80s.
Sure, it's not 1985 right now, but who knows what tomorrow will bring.
Hey, welcome to Stuck in the 80s. It's your old pal Spearsy.
And Brad in L.A.
And today we talked to one of the biggest songwriting warriors of the 80s. It's our interview with Holly Knight.
Today's episode is sponsored by the 80s Cruise. Join Steve and me and 3,000 other 80s lunatics in 2023 for a week-long trip back into time on board the Royal Caribbean Navigator of the Seas. Performers will include Devo, Bret Michaels, Kim Wilde, The Church, Howard Jones, Living Colour, John Parr, The Smithereens, Midgear, Vixen, Cutting Crew, Autograph, Tone Loc, and more.
If we don't work this out, we won't recover. We'll lose this soul for love for one another. But with all I've heard and all I've seen, I'm still lost in your mystery.
First-time guests get $200 of cabin credit. That's $200 just by using the promo code STUCK. You say it, you get it. Book it, book it, book it. Go to www.the80scruise.com for more information, but you better get off your twists and book it because we're sailing in like 2 months.
Hey everyone, if you're wondering why we're playing songs by Scandal and Tina Turner, well, it's because they were both among the amazing hits of the 80s written by today's special guest, songwriter Holly Knight. You want to run down some of her other hits, Brad?
Yes, please.
Change by John Waite, Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar, also Invincible for that matter. Obsession by Animotion, also I Engineer for that matter.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm glad you mentioned that so I don't have to.
Yeah.
That is the all-time best Animotion song as voted by engineers for engineers.
Love Touch by Rod Stewart, Pleasure and Pain by the Divinyls, Just Between You and Me by Lou Gramm. We were just talking about this song a couple weeks ago.
I mean, she's got a style, and that style is called uber success.
They're empowering tunes. You know, Her Against the World. You know, there's a theme. There's a lot of energy and a lot of confidence.
Don't forget Sometimes the Good Guys Finish First from Secret of My Success.
Yeah.
So much to like there.
She had two amazing bands in the 80s, Spider and Device. She performed keyboards on a Kiss album. She talks about that in the interview.
This is mind-blowing.
I know. She wrote soundtrack tunes for Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, The Legend of Billie Jean, Vision Quest, scores of other films and TV shows, and most importantly, at least for today, in context of the podcast, she is the author of a new memoir aptly titled I Am the Warrior, My Crazy Life Writing the Hits and Rocking the MTV 80s. Wow, I'm out of breath.
I mean, that's a lot of title right there, but wow is right. I mean, the interview starts a little slow, but she warms to Steve just like we all do because Steve is such a kind soul. It's just a great conversation. You guys are going to love it.
Yeah. I read the book, I think, in like 2 weeks. I downloaded it, and I would always stop like after each story and talk to the lovely Mrs. Spearsy and say, you won't believe what I just read here, you know, and point it out or show her a photo. It's a great book. It is a page turner. Every page practically has its own story. There's this funny story about her being in bed with Ann and Nancy Wilson watching TV one night, and they're all their toes are sticking out at the end of the
as you do.
Yeah, and so they dubbed it the Night of the 30 Toes. Or there's a story about a Bon Jovi roadie throwing her into a pool against her will at a Bon Jovi party, and thus destroying a very expensive pack of Coke that she had on her at the time. and then getting no satisfaction at all when she complained to John Bon Jovi about it. So it's just everything in there. You'll read it and you'll just be like, oh my God, she knew everyone. She hung out with everybody.
Yeah, one of those people that just kind of flew below the radar just enough. Like, you hear all those songs, you're like, oh yeah, of course I know all these songs.
Right.
But, man, she was there when it happened.
We've said her name multiple times on the podcast as we have talked about all of these songs before. So when they offered me an interview with her, I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, what arm do you want me to sever off in exchange? Because, I mean, it was just, I read that book so fast, and I had probably 300 questions in my head. I only had 20 minutes, though. So,
newsflash, the arm that he sacrificed was not his own, but one of mine.
Yeah, it seemed only fair, since you love iEngineer so much. You can engineer your own arm.
I'll get right to work on that.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic
podcaster.
We have some seggies after the interview, but in the meantime, sit back and enjoy this conversation with Holly Knight. Holly Knight, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let me say this. First of all, I love your memoir, I Am the Warrior. Every single page is full of stories that you have to read to believe, from playing keyboards for Kiss to the Night of 30 Toes with the Wilson sisters, or partying with Rod Stewart, touring the Sistine Chapel with Paul Young, having a Bon Jovi roadie throw you in a pool. It's a roller coaster ride through the 80s.
Yes, well, I'm glad you read it.
Now, well, it's like you said, being a songwriter is boring, said nobody. When did you decide to turn it all into a book?
Well, I actually wanted to write a book for a while, and then I wrote some pages and I gave it to someone who represented writers, and they got back to me at the time and said, oh, it's well written, but you're not a household name, and I don't think you'll get a deal. So that really kind of disheartened me, and I stopped writing for about a year and a half. I kind of put it on the shelf and thought, okay. And then people kept saying to me, no, don't listen to that person. You have to write a book. You have so many great stories. I love sitting around and hearing you talk about these things. So I started to do it again. And then the pandemic happened, which really made it conducive to just sort of be in a room and sit and write these things down. So that's really when I decided to go and do it anyway. And as a result, the dedication to my book is to anybody who's ever had a dream and was told no. Because even though I'm in the Songwriting Hall of Fame and I've written so many hits and everything, I was still affected by someone saying no to me. And I think that just is a terrible thing to say to someone and to squash their dreams. So, part of my hope with this book is that if you do have a dream, don't listen to anybody but your own voice. That's basically the ethos of the entire book.
Does it get easier to hear no after, through the years, or do you get to a point where you just realize it's part of the process?
It's part of the process, but it doesn't get any easier. It's kind of a twofold answer.
Sure. When you were writing it, how easily did the stories come back to you?
It was really amazing how everything came back to me, almost in some situations like PTS, like when I was writing about my childhood and stuff, how fresh those memories stay inside of you. And, there were times where if I wasn't sure about something, very often it would be like, well, how did we meet? Or when did we meet? I would call up that person and ask them. And it was interesting. Once in a while, they would have a completely different story than what I remembered it as. But so I tried to keep it as accurate as possible.
Yeah, I find that I've been doing this podcast for 17 years now, and I find that when I tell stories on the show, I feel like I download them from my brain onto the MP3, and then I don't think about them anymore. So if I were to suddenly have to write a book about it, I'd have to go back and call old friends or listen to old episodes just to make the writing process click with me.
Absolutely. Well, I kept a scrapbook of everything over the years. I mean, even when I played on the Kiss record, because they told me that I wouldn't get credit, that I Xeroxed the checks, and here it is 40 years later, and I put them in the book. Not the original checks; those were cash, but the Xerox of the check copies, which said Kiss on the top, because I sort of saved everything I could, and that helped a lot as far as remembering things and photos. And I have a pretty good memory anyway. It's selective though.
Sure. I remember when I saw the checks in the book from Kiss, I kind of squealed with glee, and I showed them to my wife, and I was like, here's some, she worked with Kiss, and I've always kind of wondered. I mean, I was like 12 years old, maybe 11 years old when they were at the height of their power in the late 70s. I mean, it must have been something else to see them, from the earlier days and kind of experience them on their rise up, and then you still, were with Paul Stanley in the 80s. So I mean, that as they were, transforming into a different kind of band.
Well, yeah, and I still talk to them and text them pretty often. So yeah, here it is. Like I said, many decades later, and we're still friends. And it's there's a lot of stuff on Kiss actually, because we have the same manager. And when I say we, I mean my first band, Spider, which I talk about in the book. And Anton Fig was the drummer. He was on Letterman.
Sure. Yeah.
He played drums on the entire Dynasty record. And then even before that, he had worked on Ace Frehley's solo record. And that's how we all started to meet the guys in Kiss. And we ended up getting the same manager, Bill Aucoin. And that was a really fun period of my life, because it was the transition from being kind of like just a kid with dreams and rehearsing in a loft to actually making records. And that was a big leap, because before that it was a fantasy, and then it became a reality.
Sure. Has anyone reached out to you since the book's publication to either, get back in touch or to thank you or to even apologize for how their behavior is depicted in the book?
Well, I haven't gotten any apologies, and I don't know if I will. But no, basically I've gotten, everybody I've sent the book to, or pretty much everybody has gotten back to me and just said they loved the book. And what's cool is it wasn't just women, because I figured, okay, I wrote this from a woman's perspective, and I kind of expected women to sort of love the book. But men are loving the book too. And the men that I know, they're all rock dudes, and the ones that I'm talking about that got back to me, they sort of love that empowerment. They love that badass attitude, and they're just sort of rallying up for me and saying, this book is great, and they've been reposting it. I've had everybody, RuPaul has reposted about it, and Elvira, who I write about in the book, reposted about it, how much they love the book. So that's very encouraging.
That's great. As you look back to all the icons you wrote for over the years, which one surprised you the most, either for being down to earth or even being unexpectedly high maintenance or in some other way?
That's an interesting question. To be honest, because I knew it was the rock and roll world, nothing really surprised me. I mean, I kind of had an open mind. It didn't surprise me, but it was sort of like, okay, here we go again with more antics. Was when I was working with Aerosmith, and they called a bunch of strippers in, who they gave them credit for. It's in the book. I know you're laughing because you read that part.
Yeah, I read that part.
Not the flesh mongos. Yeah, you have to buy the book and read about it. But and it didn't really surprise me, because I even said in the book that I've seen this before. I've seen these kind of antics, and men just being annoyingly men. you know. But let's see. Probably the most gracious person I ever talked to, which is not in the book, was Robert Plant, because I met him in the 90s, and he came over to my house one day, and we just sat and talked for 7 hours.
Wow.
I clocked it. It was 7 hours, and it was just, he was the nicest, most humble. I mean, he didn't even show up with a roadie or a road manager or someone driving him, or he came in a little rented car, and it's so funny. He's like the biggest star, and is the most unpretentious person out of all of them.
I remember one time I interviewed Robin Zander in person, and his wife, because I lived in Tampa Bay, and he lived in Tampa Bay as well, and still does. And his wife just dropped him off at the newspaper, and he just kind of sauntered on in, and just like it was just, like he was renewing his subscription or something. And
yeah, he's very down to earth too.
Yeah. Early in the book, you write that you eventually came to the revelation that love and creativity contain the same energy, that they're one and the same. But you also write that change is a scary thing, but that there's a thrill to plunging yourself into the unknown. Those are some pretty strong self-discoveries. I'm just kind of curious, how did those revelations guide your confidence at that point in your songwriting and in your romantic relationships?
Let's see. I haven't been that successful with my romantic relationships. I've been married 3 times, and divorced 3 times. But I'm actually friendly with them. And, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out that one about, relationships and love and all that. I find that the most unconditional love is with my dog. Seriously. And I wish humans could be as pure as dogs are, as far as, the love that they give and they receive. But it's a very good feeling. It's very good energy, and there's no drama. There's no baggage. There's no conditions to it. It's just a pure force of energy. And that's what I meant when I compared creativity to love. They come from the same, well, if you will, of energy that doesn't have any agenda except to be what it is, if that makes sense.
There's a purity to them, to each of them.
Yeah, exactly. There's a purity and an innocence, and they're clean and they're fresh, and it's just love. That's what love is, real love. And it's the same thing with creativity. It's sort of like this unspoken energy that it can't really, really be defined. It just is what it is, if you will. I mean, it's sounds like sort of a spiritual psychobabble, but I really do believe that. And I don't question it. I just embrace it, Yeah. Then there are the things like change, as you said, I had written about that change is a scary thing, but there's something exciting about plunging yourself into it and just going for it. It's just like it'd be like, have you ever seen when someone says, well, fall backwards, and you have to trust them and trust that they're going to capture you? It's sort of the same thing with change. Yeah. You just have to trust that you have to trust the process, really, of the universe, and that things are going to be okay. But I find that when I've taken those big sort of quantum leaps to make these changes, they've always been extremely positive. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't adversary moments. It just means that it was a good thing to trust that change was going to take me to where I needed to go. And you have to be very brave in those moments, which is sort of the ethos of a lot of songs that I write about being strong and being invincible and being empowered, and things. Those are the kind of topics I like to write about.
Speaking of that, the story of your song, The Best, I think it has easily one of the most interesting stories behind it. You write it for Paul Young as sort of a love letter to him, which I totally get. I met him in person last year and chatted with him. He's about the nicest, most charming guy in the world.
Yes, he's very charming, and when he sings, he's even more charming.
Yeah, he was playing the 80s cruise, and he was a guest of mine for a trivia session I was hosting, and so I had like 30 minutes with him. It was just the nicest guy in the world. But then Bonnie Tyler records it, and then Tina Turner re-records it, only after, though, asking you to add a bridge to it. And after all that, it becomes possibly, I guess, her signature anthem, and certainly one of the signature anthems of the 80s.
Hmm. Well, it's not just of the 80s. It's of the now. I mean, honestly, it's more popular now. It gets licensed more. It gets covered more. And because Tina has had just quite a few amazing recent years, whether it was the musical or the HBO documentary or getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she is so back on the map, and that is a signature tune of hers. So it's bigger now than it was then, believe it or not. And it's definitely the biggest song in my catalog.
Yeah. I love its longevity. I think I was blubbering like a fool when it gets performed on the TV show Schitt's Creek.
Oh yeah, three times on three episodes. And
yeah. Watching that again just before we talked today. I was watching that and just getting a little misty. I'm like, okay, don't lose it before you actually talk to her.
You're simply the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone I've ever met. And I'm stuck on your heart, I hang on every word you say.
It's a great show, and I love the way they used it. And, as a result, it's like the number one wedding song in the LBGT community, which is kind of like, it has a life of its own.
Yeah, no, I get that. No. So what are you working on next? What are your current projects?
I have a band that I helped put together called La Crush, and I've produced an EP with them. We put out our first single already, but we don't have any money behind it, so we need to get some money, and then we're going to do a video. And what I like about this group, I always wanted to produce a group that was entirely made up of women, but that took it to another level where they weren't just sort of adequate players, but as good as it gets. These girls are girls that have been playing since they were kids in their bedroom, little kids, and they're all virtuoso level. And the lead singer is a singer I work with called Lena Hall, who is an amazing rock singer. I mean, she won a Tony for Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
That's why I know the name, yeah.
Yeah. And she was also on a show called Snowpiercer.
Oh, yes, she was great in that.
Yeah. And she's just an amazing rock singer. I mean, she's a great singer. No matter, she's toured with Josh Groban, so she can sing all styles, but she's really a great rock singer. That's really her forte. So she's the lead singer. So that's a project I'm working on. And then I'm actually going to do a different book. I liked writing so much. I thought maybe I'll start to put together a kind of like a grimoire of songwriting and, the accurate lyrics. Cause it's so funny when I go on the internet, I often, I can't remember a lyric or something, and I go and look it up, and what people think the lyrics are is sometimes so funny compared to what they really are.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought I would do a book like that, and then, just keep writing. I never really stop writing. I'd love to write more for movies. I mean, I have a lot of songs in movies and TV shows, but I want to specifically write something for a movie now like I used to. So I'm working on that, and I do photography too. I'm really into black and white fine art photography, so I'm keeping pretty busy.
That's great. Well, the story of your induction into the Songwriter Hall of Fame was such a great way to end the book. I got goosebumps as you described the scene. I just want to say congratulations on that amazing honor, and thank you so much for giving my generation a soundtrack for our lives.
Oh, thank you so much. I also wanted to say that there's an audiobook that came out also the same day the book came out, and I narrated it, which I wasn't sure if I could do, but I ended up doing it and doing it well and really enjoying the process. So you can buy it in the audiobook form as well. And what's cool about that version, it's different. It's kind of cool to have both because, I don't know, for me, I like to hold a book and read it, and turn the pages and dog ear the pages. But there are original demos of some of my biggest hits on an audio version. So, for instance, I have snippets of The Best, Love is a Battlefield, The Warrior, Love Touch, songs so you can really hear when you're reading the book. It's hard to imagine, okay, the demo, where did it go from the demo to the song? You can really hear the original versions. And even if the production changed, like it did on Love is a Battlefield, which I talk about in the book, you can see that all the elements that make it a song are there. Well, there's lyrics, arrangements, and the music. You know, sometimes the production will change, and it's interesting to compare the two and see, you know, the trajectory of where it started and how they interpreted it. Sometimes, you know. And then the other thing I wanted to say really quickly was that I was looking on Amazon last week, and the book was listed as number one for hot releases in the music category, popular music, which really blew my mind. I mean, because there's a lot of memoirs out there at the moment, and so that was encouraging.
You know, no, I've read so many of the memoirs of artists that I adore from the 80s over the years. Phil Collins, Billy Idol, Sammy Hagar, but yours by far was such a page turner. I just couldn't wait to get to the next story. So it just really well
Thank
done.
you so much. That's really good to know. A lot of people have been saying that, and that's encouraging.
Yeah.
So if anybody's bought the book and you want to leave a review on Amazon or something, that's great, because I know for me, when I go to buy books and I read the reviews to see what the general consensus is. And, you know, there's always going to be someone in there that's going to gripe about something, right? So far, I haven't seen any of those, but I'm interested in everything that everybody has to say.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I'll definitely take the time to do that. And I'm totally getting the audio version of the book because I want to hear the snippets of the demos. That sounds amazing.
Oh, great. Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Thank you so much for your time. This has really been an honor.
Oh, thank you. And I hope everybody just has a very, you know, we move towards a healthier, not everybody getting so sick, and just peaceful, you know, more love and more peace and good health.
And there we go. That was fun.
Oh my gosh, so great. I'm dying to read this book.
I have it on my Kindle, and I'm seriously, after she described what the audio version is like, I'm getting it the audio version because I want to hear the original demos of some of these songs.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool. I love how low key she is. She's like, I wrote these giant hits. I'm just kind of, I wrote a book, And you know what? Look, everyone, no matter how successful they are, deals with that kind of rejection, and how they deal with it is important. And I love hearing her story about how that affected her. And then she's like, you know what? She picks herself up and she does it anyway.
It drives me batty that people discouraged her from writing the book, because of all the memoirs that I've read over the last 5 or 10 years, this by far had the greatest amount of stories and just the most amount of jaw-dropping moments.
Yeah, just the information density that's presented is, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, here I am hanging out with Aerosmith, and they invite a bunch of hookers in to provide the percussion for one of their songs. It's just like, it's never ending. Just when you think, oh, well, she probably doesn't have a Billy Idol moment. Yeah, she's got a Billy Idol moment. It's just... it's just incredible. I mean, she had complete access to so many of the names of the artists we loved. It's just, like I said, I mean, her music defines the decade, and I look forward to seeing what she comes up with next.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing she did touch on that is, of course, near and dear to my heart, and that is misunderstood lyrics, or the ever popular Mondegreen. This is something that Steve and I have been talking about, whether we could turn that into a segment. We had talked about doing a show on them, but it was going to be, well, this is what I overheard or misheard, and then, well, this is what I misheard, and it just doesn't sound very interesting, does it? I'm bored just describing it to you. We're hoping that perhaps you would have some better listener stories to share with us of lyrics that you misheard in a funny way, or funny stories around these things that you could send in, and, that'll juice up the reader mailbag a little bit. Oh, I said it. The listener mailbag a little bit.
It happens.
Yeah.
You know what else is about to happen?
The Seggies.
Prepare to qualify.
Hey, it's time for Stuck in the Arcade. We will play a snippet of an arcade machine, game, life force of the 80s. Life Force. Makes me think of Starman.
I was thinking, it makes me think of, what's the movie with the flying motorcycle? They're like a Delta Force kind of thing.
It was Delta
and
Force.
Kambata is it Delta Force?
Yeah. With
that Delta
Chuck
Force?
Norris.
No, it's worse than that. It's Megaforce.
Megaforce. You're right. That's it. Anyway.
Perseus Kambata's in that, if I remember correctly.
Anyway, we play the boinkity boink sounds. You guess right. You're entered into a prize to win a postal friendly bottle opener.
Steve's just dreaming of hearing boinkity boink sounds.
Well, it's funny because this week I'm spending all my time getting the trivia questions ready for the 80s cruise. And we're going to do a Stuck in the Arcade question each day. So I've been trying to just, pick the ones that I think, you're on a ship, you're very drunk, you're having the time of your life. You for some reason stumble into Brad and Steve's trivia session. It can't be that difficult of an arcade question or else we get drinks thrown at us.
I mean, to be fair, I'll take a free drink.
Just hand them to us.
Just set them on the counter there in front of us. That would be the best.
I can't try to remember the last time someone bought me a drink on the 80s cruise. Because you get a drink package, but
yes, it's true.
But still, I mean, hey, you want to?
I mean, it's a gesture that counts, right?
Yeah. Just if you want to go to the bartender and say, I need
stand in line with all those other yahoos, bunch of
I
drunks.
need a whiskey and a whiskey, then then pour them into one glass and give it to me. I'm not going to say no.
Who are we to say no?
Yeah. Anyway, back from episode 652, here was the arcade video game in question. Yep, that's 1942.
Yeah, a lot of those shooters sounded kind of the same, but that one's 1942.
I don't think I played this one. Is that where you're flying the plane overhead and you're
top-down view? Yeah.
Okay.
You fly from carrier to carrier. Each wave is like from one carrier to the next.
It's like an early version, or it's like a World War II version of Galaga.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true.
I know I played it on my computer, but I don't think I played it at the arcade. But anyway, a few people did. Let's read some names.
Yep. Winners this week include Dan in Omaha, Jay Swash in Beaver Creek, Brock in North Dakota, Jarrell from Boston, and Alpha Geek.
Okay, let's spin the wheel. Let's see who's going to win the postal friendly bottle opener.
Okay, here we go. A one, a two, a one. Quick spin.
Yeah.
Feels very light.
Going to land on Alpha Geek. You were this week's winner, so send us an email with your postal address and we'll get right on it. When I say get right on it, I mean...
we'll get on it.
Get down on it.
Yes, we are in sync.
Yeah, it feels good.
Oh man, I got to tell you. So speaking of arcades, we're just coming out of Christmas, and for Christmas I got a cartridge for my Switch, my Nintendo Switch. It's called Atari 50, and it's the 50th anniversary of Atari this year, which I didn't realize they were that old.
Wow.
It's kind of a documentary and kind of a bunch of old games, but the documentary clips are fantastic. Felt like I was kind of in a museum, like walking through the Museum of Atari, listening to these interviews with these basically legends of Atari and the stories they were telling. Like, there's one segment that, were people doing drugs at Atari? And there's one group that's answering, oh, absolutely. And there's another group that's saying, oh no, there were no drugs done not in my group. Oh no. It's pretty funny. But the games are, you remember these games and they're fun to play, but it's hard for it to get the stickiness it did, I think, when you were younger, just because all of us remember our dexterity being much higher and our hand-eye coordination being much more tightly coupled. It's harder to do well at these games as you remember. But I will tell you, there's a reimagined vector game on there that I can't stop playing. It alternates levels of asteroids, lunar lander, something that looks kind of Battlezone-y but isn't quite Battlezone, and Tempest. And I can't stop playing. I suck at it. I am so bad, but I can't stop playing it. It just looks fantastic, and just that vibe, that look, it just draws my brain back into that. I don't know. I can't even explain it. It's like a time machine.
So I'm curious about the Switch. I've never owned one. I don't currently have a game system. Is a Switch worth my time?
I mean, I like it. I like the fact that I can play it handheld or I can dock it and play it on the TV. So it travels well.
Okay.
It really kind of depends on what games you want to play. I also have an Xbox, so I'm one of those people.
I always get the PlayStations, but
you're a Sony guy, I know.
Yeah. God, I've had them going all the way back. I mean, the 2600. I had a Sega Genesis. I had a Nintendo, the original Nintendo NES. I had that, and then I've had all the PlayStations. I guess I guess I have the 1, 2, and 3. I don't think I got 4.
Okay.
Well,
it's funny you say the 2600, and one of the things or many of the games that are packaged in this collection are Atari 2600 games. And I was showing some of them to my son, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? You played that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "This is what we had, okay?"
Did it have Adventure on it?
It does have Adventure. If that one doesn't, the other collection I have has Night Driver. Do you remember that?
No. Oh, wait. I do.
It's just like the little light posts kind of
yes.
trying to stay on the road. Yeah, I'm playing that, and he's like, What are you doing? I'm like, "I'm driving at night. It's called Night Driver." It's like, "What's the score?" I'm like, "I don't know, but it looks like a decent score is about 60 points." It's like, "This is the stupidest game I've ever seen."
Oh, kids, they don't know.
Stick around, kid. Show you some really bad ones.
I think the last time I went to an arcade was here in Orlando. There was, I think we mentioned in a previous show, there's a place called Arcade Monsters, I think it is. And it's just 20 minutes north of here. And you pay like a flat fee and then you can play all the games for free.
Mm.
And the one thing that I noticed, the amount of time it takes for my brain to tell my fingers to do something and then it actually happens. Mm-hmm. It's like an eternity now compared to when it was.
Those pathways are not as well grooved as they were in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, every game I played, I mean, my brain knew what to do, but I couldn't communicate it fast enough anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and also games like trackball games and spinner dial games like Missile Command or Centipede, they're just not the same. Even with the thumb joystick thing, it's just like this isn't working. I need the original interfaces.
Well, these were the original games. I mean, there was Centipede there with the trackball.
Sure, I'm talking about the Switch version.
Oh, the Switch version. Okay,
that's my excuse. That's my excuse for today.
I don't know. I just don't play them anymore. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
If anything, I need to do. I have a 2600 around here somewhere. I just need to hook it up. When we get to the new house, maybe I'll make an effort.
There you go.
That'll be my thing. Anyway.
Yeah. One last thing. So Don Hammock sent both of us a link today to this photo essay in the New York Times of these LA arcades, and they're new arcades. They're not classic arcades, but still, it's definitely it was a cool article. Just look at these pictures with like Gunfight and Double Dragon and Track and Field, all beat up old machines. It's just like, oh man, take me back.
Yeah, he's always got the insider scoop on that kind of stuff. He finds news clips that we would never have found. He's a great patron. By the way, that's a good pitch for our patron program. Don't forget, we're still supporting the podcast via Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/stuckinities podcast, you can join for, I think you can join for $1 a month. I always say it's $2 a month. I'm sure there's some rule there somewhere.
That's because we want your $2.
Yeah, or you could just like buy it a year at a time and just give us $20. But you get invited to the Zoom happy hours. You get access to our Patreon only blog. And then now we have Brad's virtual drive-in theater that we do.
Yeah, we need to do another one of those.
Well, it's just really bad. I guess we should say this now, because you're about to go traveling again, and then I'm about to move into a new house, and then so I'll have all that distraction. So there may not be another podcast for a couple weeks. So
we'll throw something together.
Yeah, best of the old days or something like.
Yeah.
Here's our interview with Adam Ant, which we did do once upon a time.
That's right.
So.
Oh, well, okay. So should we play a game clip here?
Yeah, definitely play a game clip. So pay attention. Here's the video game challenge for this week. If you know it, email us at podcast@sits.com. And tune in, like I said, it's going to be a while and find out if you're a winner. But we'll be right back after this commercial.
If yours is a house divided, half the family playing board games and half playing arcade video games, then come together and play Arcade Mania, the game that combines arcade speed with board game strategy. And everyone plays every play. You plan your moves, play your cards, and score points by dodging UFOs, battling aliens, intercepting missiles, or defeating serpents. So get arcade speed with board game strategy in Arcade Mania from Milton Bradley.
Hey, we got a few minutes left. I thought, let's play PPTMN. Okay, Kelly E. from Huntsville, Alabama wrote in with a question. Brad, you want to read it?
Yeah, here we go. Kelly writes, since I'm writing to you on New Year's Eve, do you have any outlandish, awkward, or quintessentially 80s memories celebrating New Year's Eve? When I was a preteen, my dad hosted New Year's Eve concerts of the Latin jazz variety. He would sometimes put me to work at the door, so I would get to watch the adults party while I stood awkwardly nearby. That sounds like a good time, Kelly E. Though Dad would usually let me have a glass of, quote, champagne, the cheap stuff that will give you a nice headache, to toast in the new year. So, PPTMN, what's your 80s New Year's Eve memory? What do you got, Steve?
It's funny. The wife was just asking me this the other day. Like, there was one year where this is sad. My friends and I, we were just, for some reason, we took offense to the whole idea of New Year's Eve. And so we sat in my friend's house, probably drinking Milwaukee's Beast, and we watched the Weather Channel as the date changed at midnight. That was it.
Oh my God, Steve! That makes baby Jesus cry.
Because
that's awful.
This is the Weather Channel back when it was just a static page that showed the current conditions.
Right, just like forget this weather on the 8s crap. That's just all there was.
Yeah, and then it just had like a countdown, or not a countdown, but it just had like the time, dink, 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 and we just sat there, and it turned to, I don't remember what year it was, but it's probably 86, 87, and
well, yeah, post cable, so
yeah. So we watched it, and we kind of looked at each other, and we're like, "This is really bad," and we probably swore a blood oath never to talk about it again. But what the hell?
And here you are violating that oath.
Yeah,
I love it.
Sue
I love
me.
it. I gotta say, I don't have like. I don't know. New Year's Eve has never been like a big. This will shock you. I'm not a big let's go out and party on New Year's Eve guy now, especially. But I don't know that I was then either. The strong memory I have of 1980s New Year's is 1989, and this story has been told on the podcast before. Yeah, set the time machine to 2009, episode 186, and get a load of this.
I have a little surprise for you. Besides Martha Quinn. We have some letters from our listeners about what they were doing.
Excellent.
On New Year's 1989. And unfortunately, they're great letters, but these people could use a pep talk from Martha Quinn, too. So we'll try to set that up. But we have 3. Would you like to hear them?
Go for it.
All right. The first one is from Brad in L.A. Now, let's be honest. Where does he rank on your favorite listeners of all time?
He's in the top 2. Right
he
next
might be my number 1. No
right
offense
next to
Carl
Tor
Jansen.
from Tor Hansen or the guy from Finland.
What'd you say? How dare you bring up Finland? All right, this is Brad's letter. 1989, worst New Year's ever. That's not a good start, is it?
No.
I was still reeling from a brutal breakup with my longtime college girlfriend when New Year's Eve rolled around that year. I was supposed to go to a party with a friend from work, but around 7 p.m., he called me up and said, yeah, dude, we're not going to be able to make that party. Oh, man. I feel you. I feel it. Having no other plans and knowing that all my other friends were coupled up and off having fun already, I decided that the most pathetic thing I could do was stay home alone. So I went to that party. I knew nobody there. And being the socially adept engineer that I am, I had a hard time connecting with anybody in that crowded apartment. I think I had a few beers and smoked a cigar that was offered me by the host before ducking out around 11:30 to drive home. I decided I'd rather count down the seconds to a new decade alone in my car rather than be alone in a room full of people. Listen to that. Than be alone in a room full of people.
Brad's got some pain.
He does. Are you tearing up in there? I will come in there and slap your head. Oh, God, here we go. I remember popping in a cassette and listening to Killing Joke's classic track 80s on the way back to my apartment. And I remember the fog being very thick that night. And that was the way the decade ended. Not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Wow. Wow, I completely forgot about this story. Wow, I forgot about this episode of the podcast.
Oh, it's a great episode. It is one of the classics. You've got the Martha Quinn interview. You got some sad sack idiot in California writing in about how it was foggy. It's a great episode. Episode 186. Check it out.
Jeez, I really rarely go back and listen to the old ones anymore.
When we were young, when the 80s were only 20 years ago.
I really try hard not to think about the context of the current date in relation to these stories.
Yeah. Sorry, I did that to you. I mean, I must have done stuff with my friends like when I was younger in the early half of the 80s. I'm sure we probably got together and did something extraordinarily dorky, like played Night Driver on the 2600 and, drank Mountain Dew and ate nacho cheese Doritos and probably played some D&D like the nerds we were. But
No.
I don't have any specific memories.
I just remember that every other year, my family would get together in one of the three places where we lived. It was everyone would either come down to Florida, or we'd go up to Columbus, Ohio, where my grandmother still lived, or we'd go out to suburban, somewhere in Oklahoma. I don't know.
Oh, yes, we've discussed this.
I forget the name of the town. Every other year we would do that. And then on alternating years, every family stayed home and did their own shtick. But if it was a year that we were together, and if it was in Florida, I remember that the family would get a bunch of shrimp, like shrimp cocktails. That would be
plate of shrimp.
They would do that. They would, and then Uncle Frank would jump into the pool like at the stroke of midnight. Even though it'd be, even in Florida, you don't jump in the pool on January 1st. I mean, the water temperature would probably be somewhere in the 50s or 60s, but that was it. That was like the height of your social calendar. And then you went to bed like around 12:30. Everybody in their own sleeping bag.
You bet.
So, I'd like to say things have improved in the decades that follow, but not really.
What did I do on New Year's this year? I think I watched some movies with the kids. Oh, we murdered a magnum of champagne. That was fantastic.
We drank.
We did make it to midnight, much to my amazement.
We were drinking Baileys. She was drinking Baileys. I was drinking Wild Turkey. And we were playing a drinking game that we had just gotten for Christmas. Where it's one of those drink if, and then you, and much to our dismay, like every question was almost certainly something we had done. So within like 15 minutes, we were toast. So that was it. And then we went to sleep.
Nice.
And then I woke up the next day and I said I wasn't going to drink Wild Turkey anymore. So
I won't ever go drinking again.
Sure.
we'll see how long that lasts. Hey, just want to say, thank you for joining us for another year of Stuck in the 80s. It may get off to a slow start because of our travels and my moving, but we really do hope to give you some great shows, some members-only shows for our Patreons too, some more interviews. I know we have some other authors who've talked about wanting to come on the show, and we'll tell you how it goes on the 80s cruise this year, but it's great having you with us. We hope you had a great New Year's Eve. If you have a great story about something you did in the 80s on New Year's Eve, by all means, send it in, and let's keep this wheel turning.
Yeah, send us in your New Year's Eve stories. Send us in your Mondegreen stories. Just send in stories.
Yes.
We need stories.
Gosh.
We need your emotional input to support us.
Yes, exactly. Because Brad and I are right here, hopelessly stuck in the 80s.
Stuck in the 80s is now on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/stuckintheeighties podcast. Special thanks to Check Battery Daily for our theme music, and thanks for listening.